the marriage, you said, looking back, I don't know that I was ever really in love with the man. It made me want to cry.
Yeah.
But I was in love with the idea of being married to the man I had a family with. I was in love with the idea of building a life together.
Oof, that is heavy. Hey guys, and welcome to Little Black Bert 91. Yesterday we're talking about marriage failed again with Shaunie and Shaq. I want to say this. Have you ever been in a relationship, maybe even a marriage, where you looked back after you have finished that relationship and never wondered whether you were actually in love with that person, whether you actually had any type of love for that previous partner? Yeah, it's quite a surreal feeling to have when you look back and you think to yourself, oh, I've grown so much. Was that love? Was that actually me being in love? Was that actually a healthy relationship? In fact, I think it was toxic. I think the things that were happening in that relationship were not healthy, and they were harmful to me, right? Many of us have come to a place where we've actually come to an acceptance that some of our previous relationships just weren't great. And we compare it to some of the relationships that we have now that we might be in or we might have had previously. But the question is, whose fault was it that Shaunie didn't fall in love with Shaq? Because the correct wording was not that she didn't love Shaq, but she wasn't in love with Shaq. Have you ever been in a relationship where you haven't been in love with somebody? Well, you can type down below in the comment section, let us know why you weren't in love with that person. I'm going to surmise a theory, my own kind of thought process as to why I think she said those words, because Shaq obviously did reply. And hopefully we're going to have a real good conversation about it, because if you're not in love with that party, but you managed to be in a relationship, then a marriage, for 9 years, and then had 5 kids, but you weren't in love, I like to supplant to supplant my idea that this is her fault. This is not just on Shaq. This is on you. And if you're listening to this, this is about accountability, about why you are in that situation in the first place. Yes, we know Shaq was cheating for a lot of the time, but before you got into the relationship, you got into the relationship because there was something about him that drew you in. There was something about him that you wanted. There's something that was about him that you liked. So what drew Shaunie into that relationship, right? What drew her to want to even get married if she was not feeling like she was in love with him? Right now, someone could say, well, at the time I felt like I was in love and I felt like I was this and then that. Yeah, let's be honest, you had a thought in your head. Most of us have a thought in our head at a time that, you know what, can I be honest with you? I wasn't really there. I wasn't really there. Now, if you say that looking back, you know that you have a better understanding of what love is, that's completely different. But if you look back and you say, I don't know if I was really in love with somebody, that's completely different. It's a much more different space that you're actually in. So the question is, why is Shaunie waking up to this reality right now? Why is she waking up to this truth right now? It's 2024, and they divorced in, 2009 or 10 or something like that? All right. So part one, we're going to be dealing with, if you're not in love with your partner, whose fault is it? And I'm going to surmise that I believe it's your fault. Okay. And here's my quick summary. Shaunie was not sure if she was in love with Shaq, and I believe it's because when we talk about being in love with somebody, we talk about emotional connection and emotional attachment. And so one description of emotional attachment or emotional connection is a feeling of alignment and intimacy between two people that goes beyond just physical attraction. Having fun together, having conversation that can be light and fun, and then having intellectual conversations or deep conversation, one might say, or having intellectual similarities. Okay, instead it feels like you're connecting on a deeper soul level, and you feel secure connecting with somebody on more than just the top or the surface of each other. That is a definition by Mind Body Green. Another definition by Psychology Today says, basically, feeling connected means feeling in touch with someone who cares about us. Most people acknowledge that children need to feel safe as an attachment to an adult who cares for them. The reality is that adults also need a secure attachment to another adult. Each of us have an innate need to feel safe securely to another person who will be there for them in their times of physical and emotional need. Now, these two definitions actually pinpoint the co-dependency that we have, and I mean that not in the psychological way where it's bad, but in terms of the fact that we are interdependent, so I should better say, right? We have an interdependence. We need each other to co-regulate each other, to help each other grow and fester that emotional connection. It takes two. But there's another aspect to this emotional connection, which is one of the 12 steps or 12 signs of emotional connection. The very last step is being emotionally connected to self. And actually, this is where all the problems actually start from, and why I'm saying that it's your fault that you're not in love. Because the emotional connection has to happen with self first. You need to connect with you. If you can't connect with you, you can't expect the lights to be home with so somebody else to connect it with you. If you're switched off, guess what I'm going to do? Nothing I'm going to do is going to switch you on, right? Because you need to be connected with you, right? If you're not turned on, there's nothing I can do to turn you on, because you have to be connected to yourself. And I believe that both Shaunie and Shaq were probably emotionally, probably emotionally unavailable or turned off or disconnected on both of their sides, because his behavior is that he was out here cheating in the streets way later on, right? And her behavior is telling us at the end, I don't know if I was really in love with him. Well, I think surprising that they both come from the same root of a tree, which is that actually both of them were emotionally disconnected. And like I've been saying about my series called the Mirror series, whenever you meet someone and you stay in a long-term relationship, you don't just blame them and say, oh, this, that. No. You go, why was I so invested to want to stay? Now, she told us she was very much more in love with the idea of marriage than as was him. Then you weren't emotionally connected, darling. Then you weren't emotionally connected. And that's a problem with self first, because if you had seen that he wasn't emotionally connected, if you had seen that you were getting no safety, no emotional comfort, you weren't having deep conversations, you weren't interested in his likes and his hobbies, it wasn't a judgment-free zone, you weren't feeling secure, you weren't feeling like, you know what, he cares about your every little details of your day-to-day, then the question is, why would you want to go in that relationship then? The reality of the situation is because you're not emotionally connected to yourself and your needs and your wants, and you are willing to trade that in order to have the physical and the financial safety and a legacy to build with children who would financially get you secure for 18 years. Now, I'm not saying it in the wildest way, like, oh my gosh, she sat there and thought to herself, I'm gonna have kids, 5 of them, and then I'm gonna get alimony. No, that's not what she was thinking. But what I believe was happening here is that the emotional connection doesn't become a priority, right, till much later on, right? And then when you finally want what you want emotionally, you now realize you want to quit the relationship, which is fair. And so in the beginning, when you went into that relationship, you would have seen, or you would have known that you're not emotionally connecting in that space. But then if you didn't see, it's because you weren't emotionally connected yourself. Because you can't come and tell us now, after how many years, that you were now never in love with him, which means at the very beginning we got an issue. Because people that are emotionally connected to themselves, when they see people that are not emotionally connected, they don't want to connect with those persons, because you cannot connect to somebody who's not willing to connect. Do you get what I'm saying to you? Let me say that again and pause. Let's take a little second. You can't connect to somebody who's unwilling to connect with you. If Shaq is not emotionally connected, and that's why I believe that's the premise of why he was doing what he was doing, why he was out here in them streets, because usually people that are out here promiscuous usually are wounded and hurt, usually have a mummy or daddy wound, and they are emotionally disconnected because they never got the care and affection they actually needed from a child, right? This is not him out here just sowing his royal oats. This is him cheating. So there was emotional disconnect for him too. So when two people like that meet each other, right, a disconnector and somebody else meeting somebody who's also a disconnector, they see each other and they go, we can give each other what we need. And what is it that they needed? Well, Shaq needed a wife. He needed the safety of a woman that would always be there for him, regardless of whatever he did. He needed a woman that would incubate and have children for him, legacy, regardless of whatever he did. And then she needed somebody who she could also, pay some bills, keep her safe, secure. Because remember, she came into a relationship with a child already that would show some type of love and affection towards her. But in reality, it's security and safety. And she took that over her emotional needs, because she stayed in a relationship where he was cheating on her several times. Now, there's a pattern here, because I'm going to do in part 2 conversation where she was talking with Tamron, and actually her history of where she came from will actually explain why she stayed in a relationship with Shaq for so long, why she decided to accept a relationship with Shaq or stay in a marriage where he was consistently cheating and she felt it in her spirit but never really quit. Right? We'll get there in part 2, but part 1 we're going to deal with it is your fault. So listen, we're going to get deep. I know I spoke for the last 9 minutes trying to break things down and giving an introduction. It's a very long introduction, by the way, but we had to get it out. Okay, we're going to get
deeper.
All right, let's get deeper. Okay, let's get deeper. But before we do, listen, I want to let you guys know we are doing our coaching as well, and I really appreciate you guys. I'm pretty much booked up to June, so I really want you guys to use me while you can. Whilst I'm here, sign up to the coaching. Use the description in the box, the link in the description box. Sign up to my calendar. It's not free, but you can pay whatever you feel the session is worth. If you feel like you've gotten so much from a session that is a and you're always going to get from me. That's how we work, right? We work on revelation. Then pay what you feel like it's worth, okay? Or pay whatever you feel, all that you have in your jar. The Bible talks about Elijah and him doing a miracle of the widowed woman who had only empty vessels of jar and a little bit of oil and a little bit of flour. Listen, you may only have a little bit of money. Listen, use that. If that's all you got, I'm not going to try and rob you. I'm not here to try and tell you that's not enough of it. Listen, I'm doing what God has called me to do. You know what I'm saying to you? So reach out to me, sign up to my calendar, and use me, okay? All right? In the right way. Don't use me too much, okay? All right? Listen, let's get into this video because, like I said, whose fault is it that you're not in love with your partner? And we're using Shaunie and Shaq as an example, as a way of trying to really get us to understand what actually happened. So let's just play a little bit more of this video.
Together.
Absolutely. I was in love with the partnership that I never got. I didn't experience partnership in a relationship until now.
Let's pause it right there. This is really important. She said that she was in love with the idea. She was in love with the idea of partnership that she never got. So she was in delusion, right? That's the reality of most of us. We are in delusion. And so we are connecting with what? Something empty. Right? This is how I know that you're not emotionally connected, because you are willing to connect to something that doesn't exist. Think about it. If you're connecting to an idea that is actually not presently happening in your relationship, mercies of God. If you are connecting to something that is not present and not there, it's delusion. It's not there. It's not even a faith thing. It's just not there. Right? But we might hope, that it will be there. It will come later on. And in reality, the reason why is because there is a pattern in our life where we have been disconnected for so long. Before this relationship is just a further pattern of what we've experienced. Usually this starts from childhood. Usually this starts from parents not emotionally connecting with their children. Usually this starts from parents who are neglectful of the emotional state of their children. Whether they were out here cheating in the streets, whether they were disrespectful, whether they were abusive or not, whether they were, whether they would talk to you after school or not. There are so many different ways that parents can be actually neglectful of their children emotionally, and it's not always intentional. And when I don't want to say the word trauma, because I know some people don't like the word trauma, but I'm going to say trauma, okay? It's not always intentional that our parents are unintentionally emotionally neglecting us. They're going through their own thing, their own season, they're suffering in their own way, and a lot of times what happens to people is, and let me give you an example of what will happen to a lot of us, right? A lot of times there are issues happening within a household. You ever had a sick parent or a sick sibling, or as I always tell you guys, my mom was schizophrenic. What happens is the children, when there's a sick party in the house, or there's something else has taken precedence in the house, like if you're African, you have people come to stay at your house or whatever, or cousins or uncles, or you might have a situation where your family member, your mom or your dad or whatever, all right, has a very crazy job, and so they're unable to really give you the emotional connection. They can do all the physical things, but won't do the emotional capacity. You guys have heard me speak about this from my dad's perspective so many times, and we are appreciative of children about the sacrifice parents make. Let's make this very clear. We are appreciative of the sacrifice that the parents make. But in reality, emotionally, you had needs. But because those needs are not met, what tends to happen is a child will deprioritize their own feelings in order to survive. And then they will make up a narrative that will say, let me think about everybody else's perspective, because I'm being selfish right now, because you're being trained to feel like that you're being selfish. This is why we can't validate everybody's feelings. We can, but we can't. You know what I'm saying to you? Like, the way that people think sometimes has to be corrected because it's a lie, right? So you will deprioritize your feelings and put everybody else's feelings above yours. And it becomes so normal that you don't even realize you're doing it. And you choose partners who you place their needs above yours, and you end up serving them, and you become serveless. You don't have anything from them. Right? You're so used to serving like Martha was with Mary with Jesus, that you forget that you need to be served too. And you are concerned about many things but yourself. And so what will happen is you'll fail to realize that you have emotional needs, and because you've been so desensitized and turned off for so long, eventually you don't want to think about what you feel. Then you get into a relationship with a silent hope and expectation that it will change. As the course of that relationship goes on, at the beginning you'll be okay, but as the course of that relationship goes on, you suddenly realize I've got emotional needs, and actually I'm not meeting the emotional needs. And then you start to realize as you're waking up in the safety of a relationship or a marriage that you're like, I need more. But you've not been able to speak out how you feel because you've never practiced it, because you were always silenced in your childhood. Your voice was never heard. Many children are in unfortunate situations. Like I said, I had a schizophrenic parent. Maybe you had a parent that was sick or terminally ill, or a parent that, that was so busy with work that they couldn't spend time with you emotionally. So you learn to turn that off. So now when you're in a relationship, you've not been able to practice your needs emotionally being met by a parent. So what happens in a relationship is you go silent. But when you finally realize that you actually need that, there's a sharp awakening in that moment that there is more. It's called a revelation. The Bible says that darkness could not comprehend the light. The Bible tells us that Jesus asked Peter, who do men say I am? He said, you are the living Son of Christ. And Jesus said to him, listen, this has not been revealed to you by man, but revealed to you by God. When you catch a revelation, it opens your eyes. You see the world for color now, not black and white. This is why Shaunie was having this moment, because she suddenly realized that she was not emotionally connected. That's not on Shaq cheating. That's before then. Right? This is why you have to be accountable. This is before Shaq cheating. This is from before then. And you connected with something that does not exist. That's why she was in love with the idea of there being a partnership. Meanwhile, seeing that there is no partnership. It's delusion. And many of us are deluded because we have been deceived from childhood and been lied to and robbed from childhood about what emotional connection actually is, because many of our parents were in survival mode and could not give us the love that we needed emotionally. So yeah, your career is banging. Yeah, you get things done. Yeah, you are a high flyer. Yeah, you know what, when it comes to life and everything else, you're greasy. But when it comes to your relationships, you realize there's something missing. When it comes to your relationship, you keep choosing people that don't love you the way they love you. You keep choosing people that you always serve but don't serve you back. You keep choosing people that disrespect you and harm you. You keep choosing people that are abusive towards you. You keep choosing people that are always leaving you for 3 or 4 days with no comment, no communication. You keep choosing people that won't communicate with you, that are not very good communicators. It's because you are not connected to yourself. And until you start to realize that you're not connected to yourself, you will never want to choose something that is connected, because you will realize that what you yearn for, you cannot receive because your mind cannot receive it. What you yearn for, you can conceive it, but you will never receive it, because in reality, if you did, you would sabotage it. It becomes that person who's connected emotionally, if you were to see them, you wouldn't receive them very well, because you're used to a pattern of behavior of disconnecting. So you might go from being a victim to now being the bully, because you want that same disconnect. This is why women and men will choose bad women or bad men, because they are used to a pattern of disconnection and disregard and disrespect and disownership. And so they look for that in a relationship as a pattern because it's familiar to them. A familiar spirit, someone would say, right? A generational curse, but a generational pattern. It's called observed behavior. You learned that behavior through the way that you were treated as a child. Train a child in a way to go, and they will not depart from it. Okay? So when Shaunie's telling us that she was never really in love with him, yeah. She probably wasn't really in love with him because she wasn't in love with herself. And how can she be in love with him how can she be in love with him if she's not in love with herself? Right? So yeah, now she's in a relationship with Pastor, and she's in a better place. It's been 2009 when she divorced. There would have been some growth moments. Right? There would have been some growth moments where she realized, actually, there's things that I need to work on within myself to be able to receive this love that I want. All right? Some people are actually blessed by the grace of God that they get somebody who's willing to be patient, that is willing to endure, that's willing to go beyond and love you beyond what you love yourself. And in that place that they do that for you, you grow. But that's not a lot of people. Because the Bible says new wine should go into new wineskin. Why? Because when old wine goes into new wineskin, it bursts the wineskin. Right? So you have to realize that until you get a new mind, you can't receive the new wine. You know what I'm saying to you? Right? So she would have had to do some work to expand her mind. If she's saying correctly that her husband now is that man that she can really love and have partnership with. Right? Now there might be more to it, the fact that in that partnership she couldn't be a partner because he was an NBA star and it might have been a different situation, but let's take on what her words were. Okay? All right? So we're going to drop a part 2 to this. If you've liked this, please like, share, subscribe. Because I want to do a 3-part of this. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on the bell button for notification on uploads. I really hope that you guys have been blessed by this. Again, I want you guys to sign up, get in some coaching. I'm here to help. I'm here to be able to service you guys as well. And we're going to really do some great things because healing has to come. You know what I'm saying? The Bible says a ministry of reconciliation. We use this as our work of drawing people back to the light of Christ, the gospel. And the gospel is about healing. You know what I'm saying to you? And sometimes that healing is, most of the time, that healing is spiritual. But we also need physical and emotional healing as well. Because how you deal with relationships is how you deal with God. Right? Because it's a relationship, once again. So if you don't feel worthy, you're going to not feel worthy with God. If you're going to feel broken with people, you're going to feel broken with God. If you can't accept love, you're not going to accept God's love. Like you're going to transfer all of that to God the same way. Because it's a relationship. So please make sure you like, share, subscribe. We're going to drop part 2 and 3. Make sure you tune in for those series, and we look forward to speaking to you. Okay. Again, be connected to yourself first and foremost. This will give you the aspect of who I then should connect with, because once you know you and you're connected to your emotional self, you only want somebody that's connected. It's like being a believer in Jesus Christ. When you take him seriously, you don't want to be with somebody who's not equally yoked. Like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notification uploads. We appreciate you. Goodbye.